Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here for our second virtual fundraising event. I'm Kirsten Komorowski, Executive Director of the Walt Disney Family Museum, and I am honored to welcome you to this up-close and personal conversation with ethologist, conservationist, Disney Nature Ambassador, and UN Messenger of Peace, Dr. Jane Goodall. I'm also thrilled to welcome our program's moderator, President and CEO of San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, Paul Baribault. I wish to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone watching this evening for taking the time to join us and support our fundraising efforts. To those of you who are new to our virtual events, the Walt Disney Family Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 2009 by Walt Disney's daughter, Diane Disney Miller, and her son, Walter Miller. The museum is a gorgeous 40,000 square foot contemporary facility located in a former barracks building in the Presidio of San Francisco, the world's largest national park situated in an urban setting. Our galleries house thousands of rare artworks and memorabilia, a highly detailed miniature model of Disneyland, and over 200 monitors displaying nostalgic imagery and archival videos that tell the story of Walt's life, work, challenges, successes, and legacy. Again, I would like to thank all of you, our donors and guests, and in particular, our lead event sponsors, the Walt Disney Company and the Sharon D. Lund Foundation, for your invaluable support this evening. Proceeds from this virtual event will help support the Walt Disney Family Museum's educational programming, including an exciting new initiative we announced last year, the At Promise Youth Animation Academy. Since the museum's founding, a core component of our mission has been to help nurture and train the next generation of creative talent. For over a decade, we have been committed to providing specialized and engaging education in art and animation for people of all ages, with an emphasis on children from underrepresented and under-resourced communities. The At Promise Youth Animation Academy will serve as the cornerstone of our mission and builds on Walt Disney's own inspiring story of overcoming adversity, his legacy of fostering imagination and innovation, and his commitment to arts education. The Academy will provide comprehensive training in art, animation, storytelling, and other disciplines relevant to the animation and film industry in a nurturing educational environment as part of a unique program for young people, including young people from underrepresented communities. Students will not only learn skills that can set them on a career path in a creative industry, but they will also learn the importance of perseverance, problem solving, and collaboration. By providing young people with training in arts and animation, the Academy will strive to diversify the voices in the animation and film industries. As part of this effort, I'm delighted to share an exciting update on the Academy, the Animation Certificate Program for At Promise Youth in the Bay Area, in partnership with Eastside College Preparatory School, a 501c3 nonprofit and independent school committed to opening doors for students historically underrepresented in higher education. As a pillar of the East Palo Alto community, Eastside serves students who are primarily Latino, Black, and Pacific Islander, providing tuition-free education to all students. Starting this year, the museum is providing a year-long, 6-hour per week college prep animation intensive to a group of Eastside students at no cost to them, with a focus on the core principles of animation, including drawing fundamentals, character and background design, storytelling, and more. Taught by our museum studio instructors with special appearances and mentorship from guest speakers, including professionals from Disney, Pixar, CalArts, and other notable organizations, the goal of the program is to inspire artists who have been historically underrepresented in the film industry to explore their creativity and enter the world of animation. The Animation Academy Certificate Program culminates in each student developing a portfolio of work to present for college admission, including their own animated short film. Students who successfully complete the coursework will receive a certificate that verifies that they have met the standards of the program and that they have a deep knowledge of the 12 fundamental principles of animation. The Walt Disney Family Museum is thrilled to embark on this dynamic partnership with Eastside as we work towards expanding our animation education and helping to bring diverse voices and experiences to the industry. For more information about the At Promise Youth Animation Academy, please visit waltdisney.org/academy. The Jane Goodall Institute, or JGI, is similarly passionate about inspiring creativity, curiosity, and hope in young people around the world. Over the last 6 decades, Dr. Jane Goodall and JGI have established and maintained what is now the longest running study of wild chimpanzees in the world. Through her critical work in Gombe, Tanzania, Jane has not only highlighted the urgent need to protect chimpanzees from extinction, but she has also redefined species conservation to include the needs of local people and the environment. In recognition of Jane's remarkable career, she was awarded the Templeton Prize earlier this year, which honors individuals whose achievements harness the power of the sciences to explore the deepest questions of our universe and humankind's role within it. In Jane's case, her groundbreaking discoveries in advocacy for conservation have revolutionized our understanding of an interconnected world and humanity's greater purpose in caring for all life on this planet. In 2019, the Walt Disney Family Museum was honored to partner with JGI's educational platform, Roots and Shoots, to amplify our shared message. Through this partnership, the museum supports JGI's efforts to educate and empower youth to take action and improve their communities for all people, other animals, and the natural world that we share. Also, just this week, Jane released her new book, The Book of Hope, A Survival Guide for Trying Times, which I was fortunate to receive an advance copy of and devoured immediately. I can't possibly recommend it highly enough. To learn more about JGI and Roots and Shoots, please visit janegoodall.org. Now it is my great pleasure to welcome our special guests and friends of the Walt Disney Family Museum, Dr. Jane Goodall and Paul Baribault. Along with countless others, Jane is a hero to me, and every time I've had the privilege to hear her speak, my admiration of both Jane as a person and the important work that she and JGI do only deepens further. Jane's accomplishments are truly awe-inspiring, and Paul will address some of those experiences and milestones in his introduction of Jane. Paul is also an incredibly impressive and accomplished person. Paul currently serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, a nonprofit organization specializing in wildlife conservation, healthcare, science, and education. His team leads cutting-edge conservation work across 6 continents, collaborating with hundreds of partners around the globe to save wildlife, and sharing that work and knowledge with guests at the San Diego Zoo and San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Previously, Paul was with the Walt Disney Studios as Vice President of Animation Marketing Operations and Strategy and General Manager of Disney Nature, a film label which builds on the rich legacy of Walt's Oscar-winning documentary series, The True Life Adventures, and has released 6 of the top 7 highest-grossing feature-length nature films in industry history. In addition to these accomplishments, Paul serves as Vice Chair of the Jane Goodall Institute, Executive Chair of the Aspen Institute High Seas Initiative, and is on the Executive Committee of Jackson Wild. Paul is our esteemed moderator for this evening and will lead the discussion and Q&A with Jane. Welcome, Paul, and many thanks for being with us tonight.
Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Walt Disney Family Museum virtual fundraiser, an evening with Dr. Jane Goodall. I'm Paul Baribault, President and CEO of San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. In my role, I oversee the running of the San Diego Zoo, the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, and our global conservation efforts spanning 6 continents. I'm also Vice Chair of the Jane Goodall Institute's Board of Directors, as well as a board member of the Jane Goodall Legacy Foundation. As you know, my ties to Disney run deep. with over a 20-year career where I co-led theatrical marketing for Disney and Pixar Animation Studios and was the general manager of Disney Nature, which is what led me to meet Jane over 10 years ago. I, like many of you, can call myself influenced and inspired by Jane and her impact on my own life, which cannot be understated. There is no question that the role I have now is due to Jane's influence on me. And that is to say, it is an honor to join her in conversation tonight and share her messages of inspiration and hope with all of you. First, I want to thank you for joining us for the Walt Disney Family Museum's virtual fundraiser and in helping us raise critical funds for what will allow the museum to continue its important mission of providing art and animation instruction to underrepresented communities in the Bay Area. Consistently ahead of its time, Walt Disney recognized the importance of inspiring younger generations to not only understand, but preserve our natural world and the many creatures we share our planet with. Walt was the first to capture an audience's attention by pairing never-before-seen wildlife footage with enriching storytelling in his True Life Adventures series, earning him 8 Academy Awards. The Disney Nature films and brand I led represented Disney's recommitting to Walt's initial vision, in doing so in a way that would connect audiences to wildlife today in a more meaningful way. While leading Disney Nature, we created 14 feature-length wildlife films, all tied to supporting conservation initiatives around the globe. And for you animation fans out there, our lead Disney Nature producers for all of those films were Disney Animation legendary producers Don Hahn and Roy Connolly. And our thank you credits featured many Disney animation storytellers who helped us figure out how to share wildlife stories that would inspire all of us. Now, the connection Jane has to Walt Disney is much deeper than many think. Jane, the museum, and its board have shared a great relationship, from the contributions of the Ron and Diane Disney Miller Charitable Trust to the Jane Goodall Institute to the educational collaborations between Jane's Roots and Shoots youth efforts with the museum's programmatic initiatives. These organizations have together served the arts, creativity, science, the planet, and the next generation in incredibly rich ways. Prior to the Jane Goodall Institute's partnership with the museum, Jane assisted with the launch of the Disney Conservation Fund. She attended the opening day celebrations of Disney's Animal Kingdom at Walt Disney World and has served as a conservation ambassador for Disney Nature since the release of Chimpanzee in 2012. Jane has simply transformed the world. There is no other way to put it. Now, just over 60 years ago, where she stepped foot in Tanzania for the first time at the age of 26 and came back sharing insights and a perspective that would change our understanding of the world around us. Jane founded the Jane Goodall Institute, the Jane Goodall Legacy Foundation, started Roots and Shoots to inspire the next generation to take action in their own lives, which has grown to being established in 100 countries. She's a UN messenger of peace, and up until the pandemic, was traveling 300 days a year. Now, please welcome our very special guest for the evening, Dr. Jane Goodall. Jane, thank you for joining us this evening.
Well, I certainly, first of all, Paul, thank you for that introduction. You praise me too much. But anyway, I'm very grateful to all the people who are listening in to this conversation, and hopefully they'll be inspired, or let me say you, the people listening, the audience, you will be inspired and you will feel inspired to do your bit to make this a better world, to help this world move out of the state that we're in now to a better future for future generations.
Wonderful, Jane. Thank you for that. So let's talk about this last year, because I think it's on everyone's mind. As I just ended that introduction, identifying somebody who used to travel the world 300 days a year to suddenly not doing so. What has that been like for you? How has this last year changed the way that you've been engaging with people?
Well, first, Paul, I think, as you know, I was frustrated and actually angry. I was actually on my way to a speech in Belgium, and I was in the car And my sister called and said, stop, 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 come back. The United Nations building in Brussels is closed. And that's where I was giving my speech. So from that moment on, sometime in March last year, I've been here in the house where I grew up in Bournemouth, England. But it wasn't much use being frustrated and angry. So with my little team in what we call OOF, which is the Office of the Founder, only I call it GOOF, which is the Global Office of the Founder, we created Virtual Jane. And to my amazement, although it's more exhausting than any time in my life before, I've been far, far, far busier than ever in my life before. But the good news is, the silver lining, I should say, that I've been able to reach, I'm told, millions more people on social media and people in many, many more countries. Because instead of being confined to the country where I was traveling in my lecture tour, which were, little travel in Europe, travel in North America, travel in South America, travel in China, I've been available to people all over the world. And that's why I'm so busy. But it has made a difference. So it's made a difference. And that's what I'm all about, isn't it?
When we look at the Walt Disney Family Museum, they closed in early March. They immediately transitioned to virtual programming, offering more than 100 programs between April and December, most of which were free to the public, through various virtual platforms ranging from special exhibitions, talks, workshops, and classes, communicating their mission to a worldwide audience. Through these new efforts, the museum was able to continue their engagement with loyal supporters and members, as well as connect with new fans and followers, all from the safety of their homes. Ultimately, the Walt Disney Family Museum's virtual offerings gained over 500,000 views collectively. They fully reopened in April, along with a new special exhibition, the Walt Disney Studios and World War II. Jane, I remember before the pandemic, you would often try to figure out your travel schedule, and you were having to commit yourself to hemispheres of the world just to make the travel reasonable.
Yes, I know. And, the trouble was in the old days when I was touring that I would have a nice chunk of time in, say, Asia, and a nice chunk of time in USA, but then would come, oh, Jane, there's this terribly, terribly important thing. You just have to come to US, fly from Asia to USA and back again. But it was much less stressful than what I'm doing now, which is every single day, relentlessly Zooms and podcasts and webinars and video messages. And of course, there's all the emails. And it's if you look at it overall, it's been a good thing. And I have reached many, many more people. The hardest thing to do in this virtual world is to give a lecture, because when you're in an auditorium with thousands of people, you get feedback. You say something funny and people laugh. You say something sad and you see people wiping their eyes. But when you're just delivering a lecture to a little camera spot on the top of your laptop, you get no feedback whatsoever. And yet, if you don't put the same energy into what you're saying, you might as well not do it. My mother taught me that if you're going to do a thing, do it properly. So, but it is tough. And what I miss, I can still have those moments, Paul, on Zoom. I mean, I've had young people say, I never thought I'd have a chance to actually speak to you, and they're crying, even though it's not face to face. But what I miss is being with my friends. It's having a long, hard day and then going and having a glass of wine or a whiskey or a cup of tea or whatever it is that you drink. And I miss that a lot. I've got friends all over the world and they keep saying, oh, Jane, I can't wait for you to come back. And I said, well, I can't wait to get back, but right now I can't. Stuck.
Absolutely. What would you say this last year has taught us about our own human spirit and the resilience of nature and wildlife? What would you say that you kind of walk away seeing everything change, what that has taught us?
Well, I think what it's taught us is that this COVID nightmare, this pandemic, has really brought forth community spirit in many, many instances. People helping each other, people going out of their way to make things better for their neighbors. But it's also taught us that, I think certainly for some people in big cities, for the very first time as lockdown began and industry was temporarily closed down and there was less traffic, they could hear the birds. They could see the stars in the night sky, not through a mist of pollution, but bright and shining. And I think that, some of them had the pleasure of, for probably the very first time, breathing clean air. Those people will not want to go back to the old ways of doing things. But I think more people are understanding that we brought this pandemic on ourselves by disrespecting nature, disrespecting animals, trafficking animals, selling them in these horrible wildlife markets around the world, cramming them into factory farms. And in all these situations, pathogens find it easy to jump from an animal to a human, where it may cause a new so-called zoonotic disease. And we know now 75% of all new human diseases are zoonotic. So this pandemic is teaching us we have to have a new relationship with the natural world and animals, and somehow create a new, more sustainable and greener economy. And I'm not an economist. I don't know how to do that. I know we have to do it if we want to survive into the future with our children. You have children. I have grandchildren. And for them, the future is grim unless we get together and act now. I think people are beginning to realize that, after all, we're not separate from the natural world. People are beginning to realize, well, actually, not only are we part of the natural world, but we depend on it. But what we depend on is healthy ecosystems. And a healthy ecosystem is made up of all the animal and plant species that create what I call the tapestry of life. And as species become extinct, and we are in the midst of the 6th great extinction, it's as though a thread is pulled from that tapestry. And when enough threads are pulled, then that tapestry will hang in tatters and lead to ecosystem collapse, to our disadvantage.
It's absolutely true, Jane. And I think we've certainly, living through COVID this last year, we've seen how important it is to keep everything in balance, that this is something that can and will continue to happen if we don't find a better way to coexist with each other, with nature, the ecosystems, and ourselves. So Jane, share with us how you feel the Jane Goodall Institute, your global chapters, managed through this past year from your perspective.
To our amazement, we actually managed to raise more money from donors than we had budgeted for. And I think it's a sign that that our donors, many of them very faithful, not always big donations, but consistent smaller donations, they continue to donate because they trust and love what we do. And I think that's the key. So we've done extremely well. And of course, as we all know, there are certain sections of the business world that are really making hay out of this pandemic. People like in the IT world, Silicon Valley and so on, they're just making so much money. But the good news is that because companies and the world really has begun to understand that we've got to get together and take action if we care about the future, they are wanting to find ways of donating their money to the causes that matter most to them. And I'm really happy. I mean, I've been working in JGI and with chimpanzees now for 60 years. And so I'm really happy that it's come around that people trust us and want to donate money to us, because, you know, I'm in my 88th year. It's hard for me to believe, but I am. And I don't know how many years I have left. So I'm absolutely passionate that all the programs in Africa and with roots and shoots around the world, I want to ensure an endowment that will allow these projects to continue after I've gone.
So Jane, the Jane Goodall Institute runs a sanctuary for chimpanzees in Tanzania. And it's to support injured and orphaned chimpanzees. And JGI runs the conservation science research facilities in Gombe. Can you share with us how the teams there have been doing? Because so much of the tourist world, the tourism economy has obviously gone away. Part of that is obviously part of how organizations will fund conservation work in the field. Do you want to just share with us how the teams have been managing through this time?
Our sanctuary in South Africa, Chimbeden, depended almost totally on tourism, and that stopped. So the other JGIs have had to get together and send over money to keep that going. I mean, we can't abandon these chimpanzees, nor can we abandon our amazing staff. Gombe itself, well, Tanzania didn't prohibit tourism, but fortunately tourism kind of stopped. Most of the great ape programs in Africa banned tourism. We had very, very few tourists in Gombe, but we had to spend an awful lot of money on working with the villagers around Gombe and giving them some health education about the pandemic, providing as many masks as we could. So we could have done worse, and we've managed to keep going, and we're beginning to move back to normal.
Over the course of this last year, as communities were being asked to come inside and stay inside, and there were many who were obviously following those rules to protect their families and protect themselves, poachers, wildlife trafficking took full advantage of that opportunity because there wasn't those eyes out there that were always out there. The rangers weren't out there the same way they normally would be, and that created opportunity. Did you see some of that go on yourself and from your teams? Did you hear that?
Not really, but I do know because I'm in touch with people in conservation in many different fields. And I know that in some countries, for example, there was a huge uprise in elephant poaching, rhino poaching, just because of the reasons you say. And so, tourism is a double-edged sword. And tourists, of course, traveling to other countries, there's a lot of emissions from all the flying. And when you get too many tourists in an area, it destroys the very pristine environment that they've come to see. So tourism, if it's managed correctly, just like a zoo that is organized correctly, can do an awful lot of good. And we need to really promote responsible tourism, not too many people coming to one particular place. And it's the same for zoos. We need to promote the really good zoos that are AZA accredited, that look after the animals with the best possible care, and that raise money for conservation overseas and send the expertise of their veterinarians to help people working on the ground. There's huge controversy about zoos, and JGI is always being battered by animal rights people who are angry because I support good zoos. But I know so many people, I couldn't even begin to count them, who have said, well, I first began to love wild animals. I first began to realize I wanted to be a veterinarian of wildlife, first realized I wanted to go and study wildlife because of my experience in zoos. And many of those people actually ended up being caretakers, caregivers in zoos. And I just want to say one more thing about zoos before I forget. And that is that people just have this dream of life in the wild being beautiful. Animals should be in the wild. I've been to too many places around the world and seen and heard about the situation of wild animals. It isn't fun. In many places, it is horrible to be a wild animal. You hear the chainsaws coming. You hear the trucks coming because a dam is going to be built. Your trees are being cut down. You're being caught in wire snares. You're being shot by poachers. And it's just not the way that people think of the wild. The real wild, yes, but we're destroying more and more and more habitat. And that's what we have to address. It's the entire forest system that is one of the lungs of the world that is endangered now by us.
Well said, Jane. This living in balance with nature, living with balance with a One Health approach to life is essential for all humanity to thrive on into the future, as well as all ecosystems and all wildlife. Let's switch gears, Jane, for a second, and let's talk about Roots and Shoots for a bit. You started Roots and Shoots to create opportunities for youth to be inspired to take action. I know you often refer to this work as your true legacy. Share with our audience today how you've seen Roots and Shoots persevere over this past year and what you look forward to seeing from them in the future.
Well, first of all, let me say that Roots and Shoots began in 1991 with 12 high school students. And now it's actually only really active in 65 plus countries. It was in more, but sometimes it was just a small group and the leader kind of moved or died or something. But 65 very, very active countries today. And it began because I met so many young people who'd lost hope. And they told me that we'd compromised their future and there was nothing they could do about it. And well, we have compromised their future. There's no question. We've been stealing their future for years. But is it too late? I am convinced, and luckily it's not just me, there is a window of time when and if is the important word, if we get together and take action, we can start to heal some of the harm we've inflicted, and we can slow down climate change, slow down the loss of biodiversity. So anyway, Roots and Shoots now has members from kindergarten to university. More and more adults are forming groups. And the main thing is every group understands that each individual makes an impact on the planet every single day. And we get to choose what sort of impact we make. And every group chooses, they choose. We don't dictate from the top. They choose 3 projects to make the world better. 1 to help people, 1 to help animals, 1 to help the environment. And perhaps the most important thing about it, apart from the fact they're changing the world with their projects, and they are, is the fact that because we bring them together as much as possible, mostly virtually, from different countries and cultures, and they come to understand without us telling them that far more important than the color of your skin or your language or your nationality or your culture or your religion is the fact that we're all human beings. And that's what we need today, because we can't hope to protect wildlife and nature and the natural world unless we can learn to live together in peace and harmony. Only then can we live in peace and harmony with the natural world. So Roots and Shoots, this is why I'm passionate about it. And even during the pandemic, we've started many new Roots and Shoots groups during the pandemic in India, in Turkey, in Israel. So we've enabled young people to continue to help each other and help the environment even during lockdown.
Just inspiring, Jane. And it really is a testament to the importance of Roots and Shoots continuing to grow and gain importance around the world. Let me ask you a question about July 14th. July 14th is a very special day for you. Do you want to share a little bit about why July 14th is important to you in your history?
Well, I dreamed of going to Africa and living with wild animals when I was 10. And eventually I got to Kenya, met Dr. Louis Leakey, and he gave me this amazing opportunity to go and live with and learn from not just any animal, but the one most like us, the chimpanzees. And July the 14th in 1960 was the day that I first set foot on the shore of what is today Gombe National Park. And I was there just with my mother, not because I needed mummy, which some people seem to think, but because it was then part of the crumbling British Empire, and the British authorities said, we won't have anyone like Jane on her own. She has to have a companion. So Mum volunteered. So July the 14th was the day we stepped on the shore of Gombe National Park to begin a study of chimpanzees that has now just had its 60th anniversary. We're still there. We still have a research team still learning new things about these amazing closest living relatives of ours with whom we share 98.6 of our DNA. And it's, you know, when I think back over those years, when I think back of arriving in Cambridge University in 1962, being told by the professors, well, you've done everything wrong. You shouldn't have given them names. You shouldn't talk about their personality, mind, or emotion. Those are unique to us. I hadn't been to college. I didn't know that. Leakey got me into a PhD program. And I learned from my teacher, my childhood teacher, that the professors were flipping wrong over this. That teacher was my dog. Rusty, you can't share your life in a meaningful way with any kind of animal and not know that we are not the only beings on the planet with personalities, minds, and emotions. So I just carried on talking about what I knew was right. And eventually science has come to accept that we are actually part of, not separate from, the rest of the animal kingdom. And that all began on that very special July the 14th day in 1960.
I marvel at the fact that you were 26 years old at the time that you did this. Did you have any fears on that? What was going through your mind as you were stepping out there as a 26-year-old, really entering the world and first steps into not only Africa, but first steps into a path forward that you would have never predicted for yourself? What were your greatest fears at that time?
Paul, I didn't have any fears. I had dreamed about going to live with wild animals since I was 10. And now here was this unbelievable opportunity. And the only fear I had was we only had money for 6 months. And at first the chimpanzees ran away from me, ran away from me, ran away from me. They'd never seen a white ape before, which is what I was. And then my fear was that though I knew that given time I could gain their trust, did I have the time? And if they continued running away and I didn't find out the kind of information that would, you know, make its mark, I would have let Louis Leakey down because he stuck his neck out. There was I'd never been to college, I just arrived from England, and he had this faith in me that enabled him to get money for 6 months to send me out to do something nobody had ever done. And thank goodness for David Greybeard. And I have to, at this point, produce David, because David Greybeard was the first chimpanzee to lose his fear of me. And it was David Greybeard whom on that very special day in 1960, I saw him sitting on a termite mound, making and using tools to fish for termites, something which at that time, science thought only humans could do. Mind you, if people had gone to talk to people who actually live in the forest, they would have learned that, of course, those people know that chimpanzees can use tools. I've met those people. They tell me about it. And it's exciting. But of course, Western science, so arrogant, so convinced that we humans were unique and separate from the rest of the animal kingdom. So every time I found something in the chimps that challenged that belief that we were unique, there was this huge pushback. But luckily, Paul, I didn't actually care about the academic world. I just wanted to go on learning about the chimpanzees.
Oh, Jane, it's inspiring, truly. Let's now take a couple questions from some members of that next generation that you and I are both committed to inspiring to help us change the world. This question comes from Sierra, an 8th grader from Utah. Sierra is a member of Roots and Shoots Youth Leadership Council. Roots and Shoots, as you'll know, we just spoke about, is Jane's organization that empowers young people to affect positive change in their communities. The museum has partnered several times with Roots and Shoots over the last few years and continues to use educational opportunities to highlight the important work being done by young people around the world. Here is Sierra's question.
I often hear people say that we should focus more on issues that affect people, like poverty, rather than worry so much about the environment and natural world. What do you say to people who have that view?
So, Sierra, what I say in answer to your question is it's a very important question. And if we don't care about the people living in wilderness areas, if we don't get their support, there's no way we can conserve animals and their habitat. And so the Jane Goodall Institute works extensively with people, including children, to improve their lives so that they can and have become our conservation partners.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, here, question 2. Shannon and Dan from California are dear friends of the museum and generous supporters of many of the museum's educational initiatives. We are so glad to have Shannon and Dan with us. Their support, as well as the support of the museum's donor and member community, have kept the museum going during the recent closure. Here are Shannon and Dan.
Hi, Jane. Thank you for all the conservation work that you do. It's a pleasure speaking with you today.
With tourism playing such an important role in funding wildlife conservation, how has the reduction in tourism dollars over the past year due to the pandemic impacted your efforts, and what do you predict the long-term ramifications will be?
Fortunately, much of our work has not been impacted by this because much of our work does not rely on tourist dollars. Although in some cases, like in our sanctuary in South Africa, it's been pretty tough for them. But in fact, tourism serves various purposes. And one of the important things that tourism does, other than provide dollars to keep the staff who are trying to protect wildlife paid, it also inspires so many people who go out there and they tell me, I looked at an elephant, I saw into his eyes. I really want to protect that elephant. People who say to me, I met a chimpanzee in the forest. I looked into his eyes. It was like looking into the eyes of a human. I really want to help to protect them. So tourism has various functions in wildlife conservation. And one is to give money to the people who are protecting wildlife on the ground, the rangers and so on. And the other is to actually inspire people to want to join in conservation programs. It's a double-edged, I won't call it a sword because that's a bit violent, but it's a double-edged benefit.
You know, Jane, it's really important to speak about that local financial benefit, because it's the thing that oftentimes isn't talked as much about in terms of how conservation works, but communities have to be wanting to protect that which is in their own backyard. And one of the most important challenges of that is when that community, that village feels threatened by the wildlife. It's a much harder place to encourage somebody to protect that animal if that animal is threatening their family's safety, garden, and the village and community as a whole. So the importance of having financials work their way in, dollars work their way into these local communities, is so that the community sees the benefit, the financial benefit of protecting that wildlife, which will incentivize them to protect and care for more of it. So that tourism dollar absolutely has much deeper ramifications beyond a sanctuary or behind a conservation program. In many cases, it really is protecting and incentivizing those local communities to act in the best interest of their entire environment and ecosystem.
Yes, you have to give wildlife a monetary value for these people. And although we don't like to think in those terms, it's really important. And also, one other benefit that I forgot to mention is that the tourist dollars bring in foreign exchange, which makes central government really happy and gives them the feeling that it's important to preserve wildlife. And in some countries, that is absolutely key to the survival of wildlife areas.
Okay, for our next question, we have Finley here, a 5-year-old from Colorado. Finley loves nature and caring for the earth. And Jane, you are her hero. She is very excited to be asking you her question today. So here it is.
Hi, Dr. Jane Goodall. My name is Finley. I'm 5, and thank you for saving Zizi. And what makes you hopeful about a future of our Earth?
That's a wonderful question, and thank you for asking it. And you know what really makes me hopeful about the future? it's young people just like you, because you want to help, don't you? You help to save Zizi by contributing money to keep Zizi alive and healthy. And there's so many young people just like you. That gives me so much hope for the future, because it's all of you. When you grow up, you're going to be the ones to make the decisions. You're going to be the ones to say, we need to protect this area. We don't need another shopping mall. You're going to be the ones to make the difference. So thank you for asking the question. And thank you for helping to save Zizi. And I'm sure if Zizi knew about it, she would say thank you too.
Wow, Jane, when you talk about the future and you talk about your hope for the future, it is a true inspiration to all of us. And thank you for sharing that with all of us today. Next, we have Dory Reed from California. Dory is an artist coming to us from NIAD, which is short for Nurturing Independence Through Artistic Development, and provides art studio programs for adult artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The museum partnered with NIAD for a community outreach exhibition in 2016, which showcased original artworks. This exhibition is an extension of the legacy of Diane Disney Miller, who championed arts access as a vital component of the museum's commitment to community engagement. Dory's artworks draw from diverse interests, including animals in the environment, family history, and civil rights activism. Dory wanted to talk about why Jane's commitment to the lives of animals speaks to her. And she has a question as well.
We both love animals, and we both are working with animals in our work. And so I feel like in this part, we're advocating for animals in our lives. I was wondering, how old were you when you started the situation with the animals?
Well, you know, I suppose in a way, I started advocating for animals when I was 10 years old, with all my friends that animals mattered, and talked about their personalities and loved them and wanted to learn more and more and more about them. And then, of course, I went out to Gombe, and I spent so many amazing years learning about the chimpanzees in the rainforest. But when I left the rainforest, it was when I understood that chimpanzees and other animals were endangered, that their forests were going, and that their numbers were dropping. And that was when I think it was when I was about 50. I left the forest that I loved. I left the work that I loved. I left the chimpanzees to be studied by a research team. They're still studying them today. And that's when I began traveling around the world, talking about the harm that we've inflicted on the planet, and talking about the amazing people who are doing such great things to repair the harm that we've done. And that gives people hope, and that's so important. So that's why I carry on lecturing and talking and persuading people that if we act together now, we can indeed save the planet for the future. But we must act together. We must each do our bit every day to make the world a little bit better if we care about the future. You obviously do, and I do too.
Well, thank you very much, Jane, for joining us this evening. I know that I am incredibly honored and thrilled to be part of this special evening with all of you. We cannot thank you all enough for your support of the Walt Disney Family Museum and this virtual fundraiser. Jane, is there anything that you'd like to leave as a final thought for the evening?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say also thank you to everybody who's made this possible. Special thank you to you, Paul, because you have been supporting me in my dreams for an awful long time now. But I think the most important message to leave before we end this event is for everyone to remember that every single day each one of us lives, we make some impact on the planet, and we get to choose what sort of impact we make. If we all make ethical choices, then indeed we shall move towards a better world. So that is my most important last message to everybody. Make ethical choices every day you live, and go to bed and think back over the day and say, gosh, I did make a little bit of difference, and realized that there are billions of people saying they made a little bit of difference. That adds up to a huge difference. So thank you.
That was just wonderful. My heartfelt thanks to both Jane and Paul for joining us tonight. We are incredibly grateful to them for giving their valuable time and support to our second virtual fundraising event. And now we have a special final surprise, a tribute to Jane by 3 of the museum's talented animation students who have created a short animated film inspired by Jane and her work. And a similarly talented student from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music created an original composition to accompany this short film. We sent this animation to Jane as a surprise, and we'll have the privilege to see her reaction to watching it for the first time.
Hi, my name is Stefania State, and I'm an animator. I'm 23 years old, and I went to Cal State Long Beach for school. For this Jane Goodall project, I knew that I really wanted to make it something really positive. I really wanted to focus my project on her relationship with the animals that she actually found when she was out in the jungle. Focus on that animal-human bond that we all have. Like, when we look into our dog's eyes, a lot of us see our family members, you know? I'm sure that Jane felt the same way, and she has such a passion for educating the world about chimpanzees, and look at all the discoveries that she made because of her passion.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and I am currently a sophomore in computer animation at Ringling College of Art and Design. I'm calling this animation Just Like Mom, and it's meant to show the connection between like chimps and people. I wanted to capture that feeling of comfort that kind of comes from a mother's love and the nurturing that brings, and show that these animals, you know, they are gentle and caring, just like people are. At the end, it's going to be a flashback to Jane's mom brushing her hair as a child. All it takes is seeing like a mother chimp doing exactly what a human mother would do for you to be like, oh my gosh, like these animals aren't that different from us, and like they deserve love and respect as well.
My name is Ivy Santos, and I'm a recent graduate from San Francisco State University. I got into animation at an early age. I was able to take classes at the Walt Disney Family Museum, and the class there really made me realize that it's doable to work in animation as a career, and I learned a lot from all of my mentors and my peers around me. For the Jane Goodall project, I had the inspiration from watching this documentary on Disney Plus. It's called Jane Goodall: The Hope. I saw her compassion that she had for the chimps. She wasn't just trying to study them. She really wanted to take the time to understand and connect with them. Jane Goodall inspires me to become more compassionate about everything.
I've just watched each of the 3 animations, and I'm really impressed. Let me congratulate each one of you. It's very clear you've taken time to learn about my life and work. You must have read books or articles or watched films, or perhaps everything. In your own individual ways, you've all managed to capture the essence of the relationship between humans and animals, and of course my special relationship with chimpanzees and nature. I also want to thank the animation studio program that's produced the talent exemplified in the work of these young people. Stefania, I loved the transition from black and white to vibrant colour in your animation, and I thought that it really depicted the kind of relationship we should have with other animals. And by the way, I was really touched by the way that you integrated my quote into your animation. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Sydney and Travis, I loved the way you brought life to the bonds between mother and infant that are so important in both chimpanzee and human society. And I loved the way that you conveyed the depth of the forest. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ivy, I loved the way you showed me arriving in Gombe in 1960 and my excitement and wonder at entering the world of the wild chimpanzees. You captured the spirit of adventure that I felt on meeting the chimps, and I loved your use of colour. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Daria, very special congratulations to you for composing, producing and recording the music for all of the animations. For each one, you created a slightly different atmosphere, perfectly suited to the different stories. Without question, your music enhanced and added substance to each of these animations. Huge congratulations.
What a nice tribute to such an extraordinary, inspiring woman. Thank you, Jane, for bringing so much awareness and hope to not only these students, but to countless people across the globe. And thank you to you, our audience, members, and friends, for your profound generosity this evening, which will help advance our educational efforts and the expansion of the At Promise Youth Animation Academy initiative, supporting the next generation of creative talent. For more information about the museum and our programming and how you can help, please visit waltdisney.org. Any donation, no matter the size, is deeply appreciated by all of us at the Walt Disney Family Museum. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.